Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, good morning, or good night, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you so much, Calvin. And actually, I think the previous session that we've just had, that was very interesting. And I think it's a very good stage to move into the question of, or the topic of the fireside chat that I'm going to have the pleasure of moderating. And here we're talking about the question of partnerships, sustainable partnerships. And my name is Moses Ogutu. I'm currently working at the African Leadership University in Kigali, where I'm contributing my share of creating Africa's present and future entrepreneurial leaders, and not only for Africa, as we say, but also for the world. Ladies and gentlemen, if you just recall even the conversation that we've just completed, and part of what we've been discussing throughout since yesterday, we see the question of be it skills, be it energy, be it healthcare, be it infrastructure, we see deficits, we see gaps. Those gaps could be skills gap, they could be funding gaps. And so the purpose of this fireside chat, the conversation that we're going to be having is going to be how can we enhance sustainable partnerships across various sectors. We do know that partnerships are indeed the future of Africa, more so as we get off the aid bracket. And the partnerships are very critical towards achieving Africa's continental prosperity. And they are even more critical, even in the question of how we would benefit from the opportunities that the African continental free trade area, for instance, presents to us. So we're going to be talking about how can governments, institutions of higher learning, and the private sector work together to enhance sustainable partners and reduce costs by utilizing available skills and available funding opportunities. And with me is a very diverse panelist that I'm going to moderate as part of this conversation. I have to introduce them. We've got Professor Val Okaru-Bisant, who is the CEO, founder, general counsel, and social entrepreneur, who is the founder of Afrocosmo Development. And I think Dr. Val will be telling us more about herself later and the work she does. We also have Professor Maggie, who's an advisory member for the Private Sector Foundation in Uganda. Her work, of course, also cuts across collaborations between the private sector, the public sector. She's been the CEO of Uganda Investment Authority for a couple of years. On the other side, we also have William Gyude, who's a senior policy fellow at Center for Global Development, USA. And Mr. Mo is a former Minister of Public Works in Liberia, and he was also Deputy Chief of Staff to the President and head of the President's Delivery Unit. We also have Professor Wanjau, who is an Associate Professor of Entrepreneurship at Karatina University in Kenya. So as you can see, the panel is highly diverse. We've got representation from the private sector, we've got representation from the policy side, we've got representation from academia. And I'm gonna call on the panelists to introduce themselves and pretty much also tell us about the work they do and how their various organizations, the work that their various organizations is doing in terms of partnerships across sector, before we pose in some of the questions that we have with them in terms of partnerships enhancing. So I'll start with Professor Val. Professor Val, you're muted. I'm not sure if I'm
okay, good. Yeah, I was trying to unmute myself and it didn't work at first. Thank you so much, Professor Moses Ogutu, for this introduction. Yes, in a nutshell, just quick. My name, of course, Val Okaru-Bisant. I'm the CEO, General Counsel, Founder, and Social Entrepreneur of Afrocosmo Development Impact, LLC, Maryland, USA. It's an LLC registered in Maryland here. And what we do in a nutshell is we provide advisory, we also provide transactions, and also capacity building, a very unique capacity building, business, trade, legal support to SMEs. And this is in the trade, investment, and economic development space, and in the Africa and African diaspora space. Now, I'm also a professor in business and trade, having taught for so many years, not just at GW, George Washington, but also at Catholic University. Now, briefly, helping SMEs is so critical. That's what we do. Why did we jump into this space? Because they actually hire more than 79% of the workforce in Africa. So we help them to become more economically viable and productive, right? So my background, of course, working at the World Bank, multilateral organizations, also working in the private sector in mergers, acquisitions here in the US. And then I have a background, of course, in law and international relations in terms of academia. So basically, that's in a nutshell what my background is, but we can sort of talk a little more about it when we dive into the questions that Professor Moses has for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Val. I'll take the title of Professor Moses, even though I haven't attained the professor yet. But since I'm an educator and disseminate knowledge, I believe I'm on the path and I'm already playing that role. Thank you.
So you're not yet a professor.
Yes, but we'll talk about that later. Thank you.
Okay.
Let's move to Dr. Maggie, who's with the Private Sector Foundation in Uganda. Dr. Maggie?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, very clear, thank you.
Thank you so much, Moses, and good to see Val and the whole team again. I am an entrepreneur. We have the franchise for Pepsi in Uganda, so we produce Pepsi products. But I also have retired on the farm, and right now it's going to rain. My mangoes look beautiful. I wish you were all here, not in those little dull offices of yours. But I'm also a feminist. I fight for everything for women and a scout. So I am the Chief Scout of Uganda, and I support young boys and girls in scouting. I think I'll stop there.
All right, thank you, Dr. Maggie. Next, I'll introduce Mr. William Gyude from the, yes, William, you can come through.
Good morning. It's pretty early here on our side. It is a pleasure to be here this morning. My name is Gyude Moore. I'm a Senior Policy Fellow at the Center for Global Development. It's a think tank here in Washington, D.C. I am also a lecturer at the Harris School of Public Policy at the University of Chicago. As you noted in my introduction, I was previously head of the President's Delivery Unit. Basically, I was the guy who went and spied on the ministers to make sure they were doing their jobs. And then eventually I became minister myself, Minister of Works. My focus right now, what I focus on here is infrastructure in Africa, building infrastructure in Africa, especially trying to attract private capital to African infrastructure. I also focus on the presence of external actors in Africa, especially China. So I do a lot of commentary on China and Africa and research and analysis. And it's a pleasure to be here today. Hopefully the perspective I'll bring to this conversation will be from that angle, from the government side. And it's a pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. all the panelists for the brief introductions that you've given us and the work you do. As you can see, again, just as a reminder, I think we have a diverse set of panelists, and we hope that they're going to share with us their insights on how we can enhance, how we can continue creating sustainable partnerships in various sectors. Okay, I think I'm forgetting one. Professor Wanjau from Karatina University.
Good afternoon all, and Sam, good morning. My name is Kenneth Wanjau from Karatina University, a public university in Kenya, based in the central part of Kenya. I'm an associate professor of entrepreneurship. I'm also the director in charge of university industry linkage and international programs, where I'm tasked also to bring in international students to pursue some of the courses in our university, especially in research, areas of research, whichever area that we feel that they are gonna get value. And I'm also in charge of the coordinator of developing entrepreneurial universities in Kenya, Karatina University, where we partnered with University of Salad and two other universities in Kenya, that's Chuka and Dedan Kimathi. And our work is to preach the concept of entrepreneurship across the board. What I mean is at institutional level, academics, and also the players in various sectors. So we are passionate about youth and women entrepreneurship, and that's what we've been focusing on in the project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Wanjau. So just to start us off, I know we're talking about how to enhance sustainable partnerships across sectors, but before we even go into sectors broadly, I'd like to hear what the panelists think in terms of which are some of those critical sectors that we do need to enhance immediate partnerships. For instance, and I'm going to put this question twofold, maybe in the short term, as we emerge out of the current situation we are facing, and again, in the long term, as we move towards continental prosperity, those objectives of, for instance, achieving the Africa we want. So just to, okay, again, we're going to start with Professor Val, and then we're going to move back to this others.
Okay, thank you for that question, Moses. You know, you called me professor, so I called you professor back. That's how we do it. But anyway, yeah, just quickly, in terms of the most critical sectors, it's back to basic economics 101, really. And, you know, they talk about land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. So I would say that I really, really strongly believe within the framework, don't forget the AFCFTA, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So we can't even do anything without thinking about that. So short term is the financial and human capital. In other words, the labor, employment, and financial sector. And when I say the labor sector, I'm not just selling my product, but I'm talking SMEs, you know, helping them improve, especially female and youth-owned SMEs in terms of entrepreneurship. There again, factors of production, right? So those two sectors are so critical in terms of the subject matter here is sustainability, you know, to have sustainable partnerships. We'll be discussing that a little bit later. But within, like I said, within the framework of the labor sector, very, very critical. Africa faces a youth bulge. Okay, so it's a very critical sector. And within that, you have to really make sure you improve, utilize SME capacity in addition to enhancing and strengthening it. We'll talk about that a little bit later in terms of the how to do it. And the financial sector, moving beyond aid dependency to looking at trade and investments. Again, linking it to using your own, moving away from phantom aid. If you ask me, I'll explain it later, but I want to give my fellow esteemed panelists an opportunity to talk. Okay, so those two are very critical. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Val, again there. You've highlighted the importance of the financial sector and, more importantly, the labor sector, the human capital.
And I'm sorry, let me add infrastructure. That's the third factor of production. Those are three factors of production. It's common economics 101. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, and I do understand that perhaps the other panelists might also be thinking around the same lines, but Dr. Maggie, if you can share with us the critical sectors that you have identified.
Thank you very much. As an investment promoter for many years, for me, agriculture. Agriculture is a priority sector. We have a huge growing population and the world to feed, actually. We have comparative advantage as Africa with our climate. If you look at Uganda, wow, you can't believe anyone would be hungry here. Rainfall, water, land, we have it all. And the people who actually have been farming for many years, but we can only succeed if we bring on board the partnerships. So research, what is the right seed, knowledge and technology in production. Secondly, I just want to join Val on the infrastructure. Again, to make these things happen, especially energy, transport, roads, rail, and so in order to complete the agriculture value chain, because as Africa, we are sending raw products. Can we go on to manufacture, to value add, and have the kind of products that would bring in cash on being exported? And on top of that, the other infrastructure that would be critical is the industrial park. Land is challenging in Africa. So in many parts of the continent, you hear wars about. So if there's an industrial park just ready for industrialists, it makes a huge difference. And we want to complete the value chain and look at these markets, not only domestic, which is where we are right now, but regional and global markets, and to stress the AFCTA as being, for making it possible for cross-border trade, visas, simplifying visas, so we can have a market from Uganda or any other country to any other one in Africa. And lastly, cross-cutting everywhere, information and communication technology. That is a huge sector that makes a difference to all the other sectors, and therefore is very important. Joining Val is finance, is education, and I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you so much. I think those are very good addition. We already kind of trying to seeing commonalities in the sectors that are being stressed, like infrastructure and ICT. And I think the other panelists, if you happen to also be identifying those sectors, what we are more interested also in hearing is like why these sectors are very critical. So we're gonna go with Mr. Mo.
All right, and thank you. I can't, so day to day, my daily job is about how to increase investment in African infrastructure. So obviously I will begin with infrastructure. Imagine you had a wonderful farm, high yields, and you didn't have a road to get that product to the market. Imagine you didn't have storage so that you can be able to store that. In 2019, I was in Burkina Faso, and I was talking to this guy. He was telling me that they were producing a high amount of potatoes in Burkina Faso. However, after every harvest, they actually export the potatoes to Canada. But later in the year, about 8 months later, they import potatoes from Canada. The reason is they do not have storage in Burkina Faso, so that what can't be sold at the moment is stored over the long period. And so significant investment in agricultural infrastructure. I'm talking irrigation. Because of climate change, we need to be able to irrigate our agriculture and storage facilities, but also improvement in the quality of seeds that we use. As times change, we need seeds that are resistant to drought, seeds that can survive floods. Those are the kinds of things that we need. The final thing that I would say, and we can talk about this later, is that in the next, by mid-century, there should be another 2 billion people added to the global population. Half of that growth is expected to happen in Africa. More than 60% of the population is under 25. Maggie's country, Uganda, is supposedly the youngest on the continent. Our median age is 19. For most people, especially external actors, when they see this huge population, they think it is a liability. My hope is that we see our young population as an asset. But to be able to convert them into an asset, we actually need to invest in skills. So if there's one place where I believe that we should focus our attention is in skills training so that we can grow human capital. Because the value of a country is not so much what the country has, it's what the country knows. And I think we need to begin to shift to that. It's what we know, what the kinds of skills that our young people have. And so I'll stop there, and then hopefully we can have a really good conversation about these things. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Mo. Professor Wanjau, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ogutu. In academia, which you also belong to, you'll realize that, let me use an example of what actually we are really championing, especially through my directorate, is all about how you'll add value to businesses. And that is one question. Even today morning, I was meeting an industrialist who was asking, how will you make my business to be a global player? It's all about, for us, it's all about research that will add value to the industry, irrespective of the sector you are in, either manufacturing or service. Like what Dr. Kigozi is saying about agriculture, we have gone that extra mile and got in agripreneurs. We are actually now training them to convert those raw products into actually products that they can sell, that they can actually brand, yeah, so that they get value of all their inputs that they are doing. So for us, we are going back not only on research, but also to entrepreneurship 101. We are now even insisting that we have the 2 levels of government. We move away from just relying on the national government to set up the infrastructure and start talking to what we call the county governments. In America, it will be the federal, states, and other parts of the world, maybe provinces, yeah, where we are encouraging them to set up infrastructure like innovation hubs, and science parks, and even asking them to partner with us within the university to help us also set up science parks where we can be able to invite entrepreneurs and demonstrate to them how it is very important to pursue a well-established value chain system that will enable them to actually become entrepreneurial instead of just doing the traditional things. We are blessed with resources, as Dr. Kigozi says. Equally in Kenya, we're also blessed with those natural resources. Yeah, how do we convert these natural resources to an economic activity that will help us move away from the poverty levels that we find ourselves? So with that aspect of research, establishment of industrial parks, science parks, and innovation hubs, we believe if we get partners in this particular area, then we'll find ourselves actually being global players, even if you're a small enterprise. And that's why we're saying we are concentrating on the youth and the women, because they have that capacity to transit with a lot of ease from being that traditional, what in entrepreneurship we call there's the micro entrepreneur. Move away from being a micro entrepreneur to a small and medium size. It can happen with the resources that we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Wanjau, and all the panelists for the comments you've been sharing so far. So I think from what we see, there's a very great emphasis on infrastructure, there's a great emphasis on ICT, and there's a great emphasis on skills training, the human capital. And if we start with the infrastructure side, for instance, it's not that partnerships are not there. While we do have some deficits that are needed, I think we can all agree that there are some partnerships that are already going on in the African space. And interestingly, this brings me to perhaps the question I'm going to pose to you next is, what kind of partnerships do we need? That would be the first question. And I think maybe if I post the two questions together, they might help us move quickly. It's like, what kind of partnerships do we need? And second, that is basically what kind of partnerships do we need as we collaborate in these sectors? And the second part of that question would be, how do we measure, how do we determine that a partnership is sustainable? Or not. So we can start with the first one, and pretty much you can also try to respond to both prompts at the same time. And we'll start with maybe let's start with William Moore at this time from a policy side.
Well, again, this is a good question because this is something that I focus on in my day-to-day work. And if you were to ask any African today, one of the first partnerships that they would talk about is the one we have with the Chinese. I mean, if you look anywhere on our continent, every country, maybe except Eswatini, there's some sort of Chinese presence. The Chinese are present in building infrastructure. The Chinese are present in lending us money to build infrastructure. The Chinese are now even opening stores in African countries and even doing petty trading in African countries. So China is one of the partners. But our focus on China should not take away from the longer partnerships we've had. And we've had a partnership with, or if you want to call it that, a relationship with Europe for the last 500 years. And we've also had a partnership with the United States. I guess for us Africans, if we look back on this long relationship that we've had with others, is to ask ourselves, who has these relationships benefited? What exactly have we extracted from these relationships? And so from the part of governments, I think the first thing is that our continent is too big. Our needs are too great for us to pick one partner and say, this is the only partner who will be with us. Right now, we have this great power competition, a situation in which we're supposed to pick sides. We either pick the Chinese or we pick the US. We don't want to pick anyone because Africa has too diverse a set of needs for any one partner to be able to meet. So we want as many partners as possible. So I think on that front, this is very, very important. Now, each of our partners has a different kind of strength. Almost every one of the panelists today spoke about the need to improve our young people and prepare them for the 21st century workforce so that they become an asset and not a liability. Now, if you were to list the top 20 universities in the world, more than 10 would be American, right? But if you were to list the top 20 engineering firms in the world, construction companies in the world, the top 10 would include at least 7 Chinese firms. So it appears that when it comes to building hard infrastructure, maybe China is the partner we need in that. But when it comes to training our workforce, when it comes to giving our young people the kinds of skills that they require, the United States provides us an excellent kind of partnership there. I think as we look at these kinds of partnerships that we want, first, I will insist that the partnerships we establish are based on our needs and not on what others want, right? We shouldn't accept gifts and partnerships simply because someone has an excess and want to give it to us. It should be based on the need that we have. And right now, a significant need that we have in Africa is providing skills to our young people. I'll give this example, then I'll give the other panelists a chance to speak. The IFC and Google did an audit of the internet economy in Africa. And what they found was that over 30% of software engineers in Africa were self-trained, right? That the African universities who provided computer science education, that the programs that the students were learning were a generation or two behind what was actually being used. So you had a lot of young people who are active in the digital space required to take courses on YouTube, teach themselves to code. So there is a huge gap in the skills that are needed and what African institutions are providing. And I think providing those skills and finding the kinds of partnerships that allow us to be able to deliver those skills is going to be a really, really important part. And the final thing that I should say, even though I said that earlier, is that there is a report by McKinsey that says that productivity in African agriculture can produce up to 20% of global cereal and grains. And this does not require expanding the land under cultivation. How we get to that point requires us to invest in agricultural infrastructure. And I believe China can be a good partner there. So yeah, we have partnerships, but they have not always worked in our interest. And it's time now that we begin to focus those partnerships around our needs and our interests. Sorry, I took too long.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Mo. I think it's interesting mentioning that the continent is too big, the needs are too many and diverse for us to decide that we're focusing on only one external partner or the other. And I'll invite Professor Val to pick in from there. And just in addition to your responses on the type of partnerships we need, how can we even measure them? Just building up on this diversity of the continent and maybe providing insights from a private sector perspective and also like as an entrepreneur. What are your comments, Professor Val?
Am I unmuted? I think I am, right?
Yes,
thank you, Moses. And Calvin, I really told you I liked the word sustainable. You know, that adjective, sustainable partnerships. Let me tell you this, I support most of what my esteemed colleague William said, because really, I don't want to repeat that aspect of what he talked about. We've had so many partnerships. You know, if you even go on LinkedIn, everybody works on Africa, for crying out loud. Africa is the continent that has the most people that work on Africa. Yet, it is still behind. Hello? You know, partnership. Everybody is an expert. Now, if you go on LinkedIn, everybody is an expert on AFCFTA. Wherever they come from, it goes back to what I'm talking about. You cannot bite the hand that feeds you, buddy. Financial. Linked to, of course, my sister talked about agriculture, be it infrastructure, agriculture, whatever we're talking about. The starting point is financial independence, that capital, that factor of production, and human, using our people. And my brother, I agree with you. He talked about skills training, but how about utilization? I'm not just talking Nigeria alone that has Yinola, who's, I worked with him, I moderated October 1st, 2019, a high-level panel of gurus, AI people. Mark Zuckerberg is invested in Yinola's business. Liberia, where my brother is from, we have a wealth of skilled people in Africa, buddy. I'm not one to, but we need skills training and all that. But how about people, university? Look, Nigeria, people are roaming the streets, kidnapping people, and they all have university degrees. Bill Gates did not he dropped out of Harvard. AI does not really need a lot of, let me train. There's some gurus sitting in villages in Africa. I get these from time to time. I have clients, farmers, people, and my brother rightly said, and I think my sister, infrastructure is so relevant because that translates into agribusiness. I have clients who are producing stuff and in terms of technology, making sure that they're perishable strawberries, withstand the test of not perishing. It can't work if you don't have the appropriate technology. But the starting point is for us to move away from what I call phantom aid, to start liking ourselves. And when you asked, the second thing you talked about, how do you determine partnership sustainability, is about developmental impact at the grassroots. That's where it starts. Why are we always looking outward? Of course, I'm sitting here. Why did we all leave? Brain drain, some of us. But even those of us here that are still feeding back, my clients are in Africa, they're here too. Regardless of where we work, we have to, because practice makes perfect. If you don't use the youth-owned SMEs, like my sister, her farm, patronize her farm, encourage them to be more productive through, enhancing. For crying out loud, Bill Gates started in his garage. He was a solo practitioner in his garage, but he grew and grew bigger and bigger. That's what it takes, mergers, acquisitions. So we need to look at how to strengthen the build SME capacity, right? And use SME capacity through joint ventures with partners in the developed countries. We need to look at how we negotiate agreements so that they're mutually beneficial, non-zero-sum games where we don't lose as much. It's not just talking the talk. We have to start doing it. We have a lot of people in our country that are very skilled. Let's start looking at new arrangements. Even if we do, I worked at the World Bank, so I'm not one to tell you that, oh, let's just, take out aid from the whole picture. But how do we negotiate, even if it's financial aid, humanitarian relief for a certain period of time? But let's start shifting, be it infrastructure, be it agriculture. Let's look at it within the framework of using our own people, our youth and our females back at home. Very, 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 very important. And talking with them and not just talking about them. Okay, I try to do that through the forums I have in my Afrocosmo company, bringing them to talk about their issues. Everybody knows the problem of SMEs and everybody. I'm so glad we have Dr. Kigozi here, and she's actually on the ground. I'm on the ground, but working with them, right? So we need to do more of that. I don't want to, take up your time. So developmental impact, that's what's so critical to the whole process. And I want to stop there.
Thank you, Professor Val. Very, very, very insightful, especially the interesting points that everybody works on Africa. Africa is probably the continent that has the most, I think, let's say professional expert, but also so-called experts on Africa. I also like the point that you raised on how we measure sustainability of our partnership, especially the focus on how impactful it is at the grassroots level. So I'll use that point to invite Dr. Kigozi. Perhaps Dr. Kigozi, in your response, you might also want to share a little bit more on how the private sector in Uganda is also engaging in partnerships with other sectors.
Excellent. Thank you, Moses. Yes, I want to bring it down actually to the ground where we do have dialogue, more importantly than anything else, talking to people. So we do have a number of organizations, the Private Sector Foundation, Uganda, Private Sector Foundation, Kenya, Rwanda, and all are the apex body for all private sector organizations. So ours has a membership of about 208 organizations, the flowers, the beekeepers, so that's private sector foundation. And they do include the women in business, of course, and the youth entrepreneurs is the apex body. But we come along and we include in meetings, in the dialogue, the Presidential Investor Roundtable, the ministries, the important ministries. Finance is very important, agriculture, tourism, and a few others. But we don't stop there. Through the PSFU, we are therefore down at the grassroots with the very small SMEs, Uganda small scale industries, we're there. And that information comes up and is taken to the Presidential Investor Roundtable. So now the president owns it and is able to try to insist that it be changed and implementation be done. But then it goes even further with the East Africa. We have the East African Business Council, again with membership from the various, we now 6 countries. Congo is coming in, but not yet. So the 6 countries have private sector foundations that then feed into the EABC. Now moving on to COMESA, of course, the African Union, with the AFCTA, we are really excited to see how that takes us forward. But that's not it. I think academia is critical. Academia is a part of this, as are civil society organizations. Civil society deal with the grassroots. They're down there. They know. They lobby. They're activists. And now with climate change, they are playing a very important role. So that is the dialogue that we sort of have and are able to then try to find solutions to the many questions. But of course, development partners, you've been talking a lot about them. They're very important. They bring in the money. They bring in a lot of the know-how. I mean, a lot of our health is supported by the American government, by Global Fund. And yeah, you know, that is true, I think, in most parts of Africa. But they also come in where we want them. They do help with the skills. As a private sector, we are skilling young Ugandans, both with MasterCard and with the World Bank. So they are coming in as development partners in issues that we are asking for. They also work with academia, fund research, which is very difficult to fund for a government, a local government. And the other area is peace. Peace is critical. If we're going to move anywhere, as long as we are killing one another, it's not going to work. So the national dialogue comes in. Peace, headed by Women's Situation Room, comes in, and we hope with all those initiatives, we shall be able to move ahead. I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Maggie. I'll pick in from the point where you mentioned that funding is indeed a challenge for most of our entrepreneurs, and I'll invite Professor Kenneth to perhaps, in addition to the previous prompt that I've given, perhaps when I comment on, because you're a professor and a researcher on entrepreneurship, how do we establish sustainable entrepreneurial ecosystems? Especially, I think, given that you're from a Kenyan context, and we've seen these situations where we get funders, they come in, they do what I would call, what I can term as play around with our companies, and then a couple of days, then again, they leave. And of course, this money is also not homegrown, it comes from out. So how do we perhaps establish sustainable entrepreneurial ecosystems? More so if we talk about the funding space, for instance.
Thank you, Dr. Ogutu. An interesting question. And I would like to look at it from two perspectives. From strategic partnership and industrial partnership. It all depends with what you are pursuing. Are you pursuing a strategic partnership whereby we have players from within the same industry partnering? And what are the partnering components, or what we call the MOU components? That defines the kind of policy document that you'll develop. Then we have the industrial partnership, which I'm also very keen on, and which also Dr. Kigozi has talked about when you talk about all those associations, where we have now academia coming in to partner with the industry just to see how we can have this shift from just being traditional industries to entrepreneurial establishment. What can you do for us? So I would say that where you're saying that partners come and play around with us, what we've discovered is in Kenya, we have the Public-Private Partnership Act, which again is actually being managed by the government. And you realize that when the government comes in, it takes time for this partnership to actualize, where they bring in a partner to work with either a public institution or even ask the private sector to chip in. But they will always look at it from the private sector, will always look at it as, yes, a way of actually demonstrating we have the expertise. But thereafter, what happens? Again, the politics comes in. But what we are now pursuing, what you have asked about the entrepreneurial partnership, is where now we are able to work with different industries from different sectors and ensure that whatever we are gonna do it, is it actually helping us to move to the next level of the way we are doing business, both of us. What Professor Val talked about, and one day I'll hope to get your email so that I can invite you over to Kenya. You see actually how we are able to work with the youth and the women entrepreneurs, see how we are actually helping them to convert what they are producing to a package that can actually be sold in the global market. That's the kind of partnership you're looking at. We are looking at a partnership that helps the industry, or even if it's institutions, research institutions, helping them to develop products based on innovation. So if these partnerships are not going to generate innovations that will have an impact, then to me, I would say that that is not sustainable. Yeah, that means the impact will be so marginal that there is no need of actually having the partnership. So again, we go back to the kind of agreements, MOUs that we are developing with players from different industries. What is so strategic about them? And how do you intend to benefit from this kind of partnerships? I personally look at one to be short term, yeah, and the other one should be long term. And the long term is we are talking of one that will actually have an impact. And here you also have to look at what is the strategic vision of that partner you're bringing on board. The others who are just coming for short term. So how will you actually benefit from that short term agreement? And how can you develop a model that will sustain after they have left, sustain the activities that you have generated within that particular short term? So if they're not actually bringing in a shift of the mindset, then we say they're not actually entrepreneurial. Yeah, they just leave you just the way you are, no shift. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor Kenneth. Very insightful there on strategic partnerships and the work that the academia is doing in collaborating with the private and public sector in Kenya through the PPPs, for example. So I'd like to see if there's anybody in the audience who wants to ask a question to the panelists. You can post the question in the chat, or alternatively, I think we can welcome one person who wishes to raise a hand and unmute themselves and ask a question before we conclude by asking the panelists for the action plans. Anybody in the audience? I see only one hand raised. I think that's Mr. Joshua. I'll take your question. Mr. Joshua, please.
I was trying to unmute.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been so amazed. It's awesome, the number of experts who are here and the knowledge. My question is, how can our experts encourage the adoption of indigenous knowledge into what they refer to as social innovation in terms of youth and women owned startup entrepreneurships, especially in sustainable agriculture?
Thank you, Mr. Joshua. I'll invite Professor Val. 1 minute, please, if you can respond to that.
Yes. Hi, thank you for that very important question on adoption of indigenous knowledge. It goes back to biting the hand that feeds you and being controlled by the hand that feeds you. Phantom aid, which I mentioned earlier, is about how the aid system works. Aid is given to Africa. Do you expect them not to use their own consultants, for crying out loud? Do you expect them not to set the policies for you, for crying out loud? Africa needs to start revisiting how they negotiate aid versus trade versus investments. We have enough resources in Africa. There's trade by barter. There are all kinds of ways in which we could change our financial structures, whereby we can then define who we are. Africa is like chicken without head. We're moving around. Everybody is giving us ideas. Like I said, my brother, many people are working in Africa. It's the continent where you have more people working with so many. Oh yeah, great idea. Oh, great idea. I have experience visiting places when I worked at the World Bank where there's so many people recommending the same policy in the same ministry because they have money. We're listening to them. Oh yeah, give it to me. Oh yeah, give it to window dressing. So you're right. We have to go back to the drawing board and use our head and not be bought by the money coming in. We have to be able to revisit who we really are. Even if we're getting aid in whatever form, like other countries, China and all, they get aid. We have to start thinking straight and not rely on aid dependency. Start looking at human capital as a major source for us to be able, the cultural aspects of our human capital development needs to be tapped into, but we can't do it without utilizing the skill. Because right now, everybody brings training. Oh, training, capacity building. I say, no, capacity utilization is different from building. Everybody, they have a financial consultancy, they give us money. They say, oh, we're going to do capacity building. So 20 million is for capacity building. Building, how many years are they going to be building capacity in Africa, for crying out loud? Where that capacity building takes us far away from where we're like confused, the lost continent, and we're not cursed. Okay. We are blessed, like a bank that has a lot of resources and criminals are going in there to sap it of its resources. That's how Africa is right now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Val.
Financial aid, but let's use our head. Mutual gain, mutual trust, mutual partnerships.
Thank you so much, Professor Val. I think there's a couple of interesting questions. And so because we have different questions, I'm going to be posting these questions to the panelists. So as you respond to it in less than in about a minute, also provide your any recommendations that you might have. And one of the interesting questions that I've seen in the chat, and I'm going to post this to Mr. Moore. Someone is asking, can we profile ideas on intra-African collaborations? And this question is from Greg. Can we profile ideas on intra-African collaborations on a people-to-people level and not on government levels because that has not worked over the years?
Yeah, I think, Dr. Kigozi would actually speak better to that because she spoke about this apex organization of the private sector across East Africa and the kinds of collaboration that they're already having. And one of the difficulties is that, so we have the lowest amount of intra-regional trade, right? There's absolutely no overland trade between West Africa and Southern Africa. There is no direct trade between West Africa and East Africa. Part of it is simply the lack of infrastructure that allows us to do this, but part of it is because we haven't really looked inward. Most of what we eat on the continent is imported. Sierra Leone imports onions from the Netherlands, even though Kenya produces onions. And so one of the ways that we can reduce our dependence on other people is when we begin to trade among ourselves and with ourselves. The one place where I have seen it go really, really big is in the creative space, especially when it comes to music. There are Nigerian musical artists who are collaborating with South African musical artists. There are Kenyan musical artists who are collaborating with Nigerian musical artists. My hope is that we can move beyond the creatives and move into other sectors where we can begin to see cross-regional participation. The one thing that I want to add here is we have better tools now. If you want to know who's working in a certain thing in Kenya, you can go online and find them. You can go on social media and find them. So I think if we want to continue to collaborate across regions and across countries, we have better tools to be able to do that today than we could in, say, 10 or 20 years ago. So I want to stop there.
Okay, thanks so much. Again, great insights on the lack of overland trade between African regional areas. I'm gonna post one. I'm gonna pick another question.
Dr. Moses.
Yes. Actually, I'm
this...
coming to you. I'm coming to you. So in addition to your response to that, in addition to the insight you have, I also want you to comment on how can ordinary youth and women influence the needed partnership, which at present is led by governments. I was coming to you, so you can also start from,
I just wanted to support what my esteemed two panelists have said about Africa. That's Professor Val and Mo. There are two ceremonies that take place globally, and what is surprising is the way we have failed to actually recognize the importance of these two days. I'm talking about the African Industrialization Day. I don't know whether Professor Val, you know about it. It's celebrated in November 20th. How do the African countries celebrate this? Yeah, we failed. And for us, what like our university, what we've done, we have actually made it a key event in our almanac, where we intend to invite various business associations. For example, the chair of women in manufacturing in Kenya under the Kenya Association of Manufacturers to come and tell us, entrepreneurship has always been associated with the male, but let's put that aside and let's see what even the women entrepreneurs are actually doing. Yeah, let's also see what the youth entrepreneur is actually doing, and by coming up, by giving them these platforms to showcase what they are doing and making sure that part of the audience are government officials, then that is one way of driving the agenda. It means that there is a lot we can offer if you give us the right business environment. We have a young entrepreneur now making phone chargers, what we used to import, from China. And he's actually driving that agenda that the youth can actually be key players on this sector that has actually been associated with multinationals. Just give us the right policy and we'll actually champion it. The other one is the International Women's Day, March 8th. What are we doing about it? I've always said that on such occasions, let's recognize that woman entrepreneur who has indigenous knowledge that actually can change the business scenario. And make sure you recognize, you don't have to go to that one who is a corporate player. Yes, we recognize that one. But what are we doing about that rural woman entrepreneur who is actually churning out products that actually are not only making changes within the community that she comes from. If such a platform, you invite the government officers, they'll able now to understand what it means coming up with policies that target rural entrepreneurship. These 2 days, we need to change how we celebrate them in Africa. That's what I can say.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Wanjau. I'm sure the time manager would pretty much be on my neck now saying that I'm might be already going above my time. But if you allow us just an extra minute, I'll invite every panelist, starting with Dr. Val, maybe just in a minute, what are your final recommendations and action plans for enhancing sustainable partnerships between the sectors in the continent? Okay.
Yeah, in 1 second, just negotiate in terms of sustainable partnerships. Please, African governments, negotiate, partnerships that are based on mutual gain, mutual trust, mutual partnerships that pay attention to developmental impact at the grassroots level. For your SMEs who are entrepreneurs, non-entrepreneurs, based on utilization of those SME skills, not just the word capacity building, but capacity utilization, helping them strengthen supply chain to be able to produce and manufacture agriculture-based products, help them with providing infrastructure. So basically, human capital development stretched out to include youth and female-owned SMEs, utilization of their capacity, and also building upon their capacity, and also financial independence. Even if you take aid, negotiate for it to be beneficial to you as a country.
Thank you, Professor.
And pay attention to other factors of production, because that's basic economic 101. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Valls. Basic economics 101. Mr. William, what are your final words?
I think for me, it is, even as we pursue better partnerships, even as we pursue sustainable partnerships, you want to improve yourself so that you yourself are a good partner. Nobody wants partnership with someone who doesn't add value. So for a young person who's listening on this call, find a way to improve yourself. Can you learn a skill? Can you acquire some sort of something that gives you an advantage, so that when you form a partnership, you're bringing something to the partnership and not just taking away from the partner? That would be my recommendation.
Thank you so much. Dr. Kigozi.
Thank you. I would just top up on what William Moore has just said. To government, first of all, because they own the education system. Let's look at this curricula. Let's look at the curricula that our children go to 8 hours a day, every day for years and years, and include useful things like entrepreneurship, ICT skills, and love of country. You go to America and you sing the national anthem of America, and even the young children have their hand on their heart and they have tears in their eyes. That is something. We sing the national anthem and everybody's thinking politics. It's the leader. When does it become my country, the country that I love? How do we get our people and our children, the young ones especially, who are confusing politics and hatred for their own country? And we need to partner more seriously, the private sector, on skilling young people and internships and mentorship, and also the dialogue. Dialogue is critical. Can we talk to one another? Can we listen to Val? Can we listen to everyone here who's had some great points? And that doesn't really happen. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kigozi. Spoken like a real scout. Patriotism, dialogues, etc. Professor Kenneth.
Yeah, I'll just build on what you have said. Actually, you need to make yourself attractive, with the kind of products and services that you're offering. And that's when you can actually attract a strategic partner. If you're just offering ordinary things, then you're not attractive. So the other thing is, we need, just what Professor Val said, we are not good negotiators in Africa, Professor Val. We are not. And that's why we failed. So we need to go back to our drawing board and learn to negotiate, acquire those negotiation skills. And also, look at our curriculum. What is so entrepreneurial about our curriculum? Let's start bringing in that aspect of having an entrepreneurial curriculum, so that we are generating job creators who can actually attract strategic partners who can help them bring in those critical resources that will enable that particular graduate to become an employer. So that's it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much to our panelists. I think they've shared very insightful points there, and thanks so much to the audience. I do hope that you enjoyed this session as much as I did. My final parting shots to everybody is that, yes, the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the partnership system, we do rely on a system that has been put there by the government, but I encourage everybody here that just building up on what the panelists have said, let us disrupt the system, let us disrupt the ecosystem, and let us be patriotic as we build towards the achievements of the Africa we want. Thank you very much. I'll hand it over to...
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.